Welcome to the InPowered Life podcast,
a space dedicated to spreading the message that you have the power within to create everything you seek.
So if you're ready to enroll in a new kind of higher learning, the kind that leads to true personal freedom, hang here with us.
We're your hosts, Rudi and Anniston, and this is InPowered Life.
Welcome to the InPowered Life podcast. My name is Rudi Riekstins. I'm joined by my co-host, Anniston Riekstins. And today's episode is an episode we've actually wanted to record for a really, really long time. We get so many requests from people wanting to know what books do we recommend that have supported us in our growth and in our personal development. Anniston, as we have many times shared on the podcast, is an avid reader, anywhere from 2 to 3 books a week. And so she will read something, and then if it's good, it gets transferred from her bedside table to my bedside table. And so the pile continues to grow. I have like a mound of books that I need to eventually get to. And some of those books I have managed to scrape off the pile. And they have created such profound shifts, not only in how I think, but in how I feel, how I show up, and who I ultimately am as a person. And so when we speak at events, which we just did last week, we had so many people say, could you give us recommendations? This is where I am in life, and I'm looking for a good read. And so that inspired us to kick off today's episode, which is to share with you our 3 favorite books each. So you're going to get 6 book recommendations at a minimum in today's episode that are guaranteed that if you invest in the time, the effort, and the energy to read them, will potentially, irrevocably change your life.
I am so excited about this episode, as Rudi knows, because one of my absolute favorite things on planet Earth are books. I am still a library card carrying person who literally every single weekend I go with the kids and we go pick out our books. And I just, for me, my spiritual journey and my overall journey through life has really come at the heels of lots of really empowering, transforming books. And because I love to read, I find that when I'm ready for that next lesson, when I'm ready to expand, the right book always finds me. And or I'll go back to a book that I've read before and I'll read it again and get something completely different out of it. I just feel like someone has taken the time to write down all of their knowledge on a topic. And usually it's over the course of many years that they've gained this knowledge, many certifications, a lot of life experience that has gone into these books that you can then read and gain from all that wisdom that they have earned and do so in a relatively short amount of time and for a relatively small investment. And so books for me offer breakthroughs. And I know oftentimes we think of big breakthroughs happening when you go sit in a room for a week and learn from a bunch of speakers, or when you are intentionally going through something really intense. But I also believe that when you open yourself up to become a student of life and you open yourself up to learning, that just reading one paragraph in a book can radically alter your life and alter the way that you think about your life. So I am so excited about this episode. And when Rudi said, okay, let's each pick a couple of books, we went and stood in front of our bookshelf, which houses all of our nonfiction books that we love to read and go back to again and again. And it was not an easy task to narrow it down. And so I do want to preface and say, this is not an exhaustive list. This is not our absolute favorite books, because it's impossible for us to really say that because we have favorite books on different categories. So what we did do instead was choose books that we knew had not only impacted our lives greatly, but that we have referred to other people and they have had tremendous growth from it as well. So do you want to kick it off with your first book recommendation?
So when we chose these books, as Anniston shared, it was based on us giving you recommendations based on where you might find yourself in life. Anniston said something a moment ago that I want to hammer just for a second, a little more. Last week, she was standing at an event on stage and in front of 500 plus people had said, if you have heard me talk on a topic like this before, and you happen to be back in the room today, you are not the same person you were when you heard it the first time. And so the information is going to be new to you today. And she approaches books that way. And I have adopted the ability to approach books that way. In the past, I would never rewatch a movie because I'd be like, I've seen it. Why would I waste another hour and a half of my life? Like, that's ridiculous. And she would watch the same movie again and again and again because she loves to get something new from that or guaranteed outcome. And the same thing applies with books. And so I've gone back and reread books or reread chapters or reread sections of books because there's something that I need. But every time I'm reading it, I'm rereading it anew. So if we mention a book that you've read today, my challenge to you would be to go back and reread it. Even if you've read the book, go back and reread it because you never know what nugget is waiting because there's a new version of you that's going to be approaching that book. And so for anybody that is in a place in life where they feel like they have a dream or a goal or a desire to have something, be something, and do something, which is ultimately the Empowered Life podcast, and you want to move forward in life, but you seem to feel like you're stuck. You seem to feel like you're not in control. There's something you want to do, but you're just not able to get to that, almost as if life is putting roadblocks in front of you. Then I want to challenge you to read a book that profoundly changed my life. And this is a book called The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer. Michael Singer wrote a book that's so easy to read that it feels like it's really just a story upon stories upon stories, but it is his life story. And through his life of how he had a plan or an agenda for what he believed he wanted for his life, but there was a higher power that had a plan over his plan. And that at one point in time, without giving up the story, he surrendered to a plan greater than the one he had for himself. And his life became magical. And I read this book at a time where I was resisting, pushing up against things, trying to force situations or circumstances because I had dreams, I had goals, I had desires. There were things I wanted to do. And this book came to me in a very timely fashion. And when I read it, it reminded me that there is a power that is so great, so profound, that knows more than we know. We have such a limited vantage point on where we are. We know where we want to go, but we don't see how we're going to get there. And sometimes something that feels like a detour is actually the fast track to the thing that you want. And I do not want to spoil the story. I don't want to give away any part of this book because I promise you, if you read this, you're going to message me on Instagram. You're going to say to me, what a life-changing book. I'm so grateful I read it. That is Michael Singer, The Surrender Experiment. Highly recommend you get it. I would get it today.
I loved that book. Many of you have probably heard of Michael Singer. He wrote The Untethered Soul, which is just should be required reading for anyone that's wanting to start opening up spiritually and to start thinking about themselves and the world differently. What I loved about this book, to what Rudi was saying, is that it's his story. This is his life story. And it's told in such a beautiful way that not only is it a captivating read. I mean, I was going page after page after page. I couldn't wait to see what was going to happen next and just thinking, my gosh, this guy's life has been just absolutely incredible. But it was such an example and validation for how we can choose to show up in our own lives and how when you are in a state of faith and trusting that everything that's happening is guiding you where you need to be going and you're always being qualified for what's coming next, that life just feels so much easier, so much more beautiful, so much more magical. And he really shows the way of how to do this in this book. And man, we come back to it time and time again in our lives where we're like, I think it's time for a surrender experiment. I think we need to surrender experiment this situation, or this we'll be in a season of life where we feel like we have blindfolds on and we have no idea what's coming. And we'll call back to this book and remember what Michael said. You know what I mean? You just have to surrender and trust that what is here is meant to be here, and what is meant for us will not be kept from us. And so highly recommend the surrender experiment. Great first pick, Rudi. All right. My first selection for today is actually All the Things I Wish I Knew, 80 Life Lessons, How to Be a Fierce Chick Living Her Best Life by Sarah Centrella. If you haven't had the pleasure of finding Sarah Centrella online or working with Sarah Centrella, you absolutely have to. Rudi and I have had an opportunity to meet this author. She's been on our podcast. We've been on her podcast. And what's so incredible about this specific book, because this is not her first book, this is actually her third book, I believe, is that she really takes all of the major lessons that she teaches to women specifically in her coaching programs, and she's dialed it in and dialed it down into this beautiful book full of wisdom that touches on all the different aspects of our lives. And that's one of the things I love so much about this book, because it's written in these little bite-sized chapters, which are these 80 life lessons. And so even if you only have 5 minutes to read in a day, you could probably finish a chapter. And within each of these 80 life lessons are just the most incredible tools, tactics, strategies, ways of approaching things. It's almost like you have Sarah, sitting next to you on a couch, having a conversation with you. And it's exactly how it's written, very casually. She's funny. She's going to make you cry. She's going to make you laugh. But really, she's a teacher. And she shares her story, and her story is super inspiring of all the things that she had to go through in her life. And she really demonstrates what true resilience is. And that's what she turns around now. And her mission is really empowering women to step into their power, to step into their confidence, into their wealth, into their purpose. And this book is one of my favorites of hers. So I highly recommend it to any woman I know. It makes a great gift as well, because it is such an easy read, but don't let that be mistaken for not powerful, because it's incredibly powerful. I learned so much from her in this book.
When we had the opportunity to meet Sarah Centrella and interview her on the show, I immediately fell in love with her personality, how she shows up and how she's able to communicate. And I just want to emphasize, when blogging was a big thing, she started a small blog, and that blog blew up almost overnight. And thousands and thousands and thousands of people would read her blog every day, because she has a unique ability to take complex topics and explain them in a way that, they say most books in a library are written in third grade English, and that if you can't explain something to somebody in third or fourth grade, then you're not able to articulate it in a way that people are going to understand. She is able to do this in a way where you were laughing, as Anniston said, you're crying, but you walk away with the lesson. And I think it's the greatest way to learn. Love the book recommendation. Love Sarah Centrella. My next book recommendation is for anybody that is learning to take a little bit of accountability in their life, and they need a little more information about what it is that we're teaching on the InPowered Life podcast. And my next book recommendation is going to be 2 books, but it's the same author, and it's Lynn McTaggart. And the book I'm holding in my hand is called The Power of 8. But there's a book that comes before this, and I don't want you to get it confused with my first book recommendation. This is going to be the intention experiment. So the first book recommendation was the surrender experiment. This is the intention experiment, and then the power of 8. I don't have the intention experiment in my hand, because Anniston and I love that when people come over and they ask us about book recommendations, we bring them up into our studio, and there's an entire bookshelf, and we show them different books, and then they get to leave with them, and not all of those books come home.
He came to me today. He's like, "Where's the intention experiment? Did you give this away?" I'm like, I swear I didn't, but I probably did. I'm probably guilty.
The second or third copy we've replaced because I want the copy of the book in our home. And so I want to explain the power of the book that I'm holding in my hand. Lynn McTaggart is somebody who has taken really in-depth scientific topics as it relates to thoughts, feelings, law of attraction, creation, the power of people working together with a unified vision, and then goes through and is able to, in a really easy way for you to understand, gives you the scientific evidence behind a lot of the things that we teach in life and in business every single day. And some of the examples that come out of this book is to share with you the power of your thoughts, and that a single thought carries the power of the potential to have massive ripple effects out into the world. And there were experiments done in controlled environments where a scientist would have a thought about harming a plant, and they were able to register with the highest, most sensitive equipment that the plants themselves, the minute the scientist had a thought of wanting to do harm to the plant, like cut the leaf or damage the leaf or burn the leaf, the plants were registering panic, like we would be having a panic attack. And there would be this electronic impulse that would go through this equipment connected to the plant, that the plant was freaking out that it was going to be injured. Then the scientist would say, "Oh, I'm not going to harm you. I'm not going to harm you." And then it would slowly, not instantly, it would slowly start to come back to normal. The same way a human would have controlled emotions from getting a fright and then being able to calm down. They then take these experiments and layer them upon layer. They create distance, they create time, they create space. And it just shows you that we are not physical human beings, that we are living in this energetic world. And that if you ever want to learn and to gain the confidence in to know that every time you have a thought, your thought is creating your environment, that it has ripple effects, that your words carry power and potential that are creating your future, and that every thought that you have is altering the physical body and your environment around you, then I highly recommend everything that Lynn McTaggart has written. She wrote The Power of Eight, and directly after reading The Power of Eight, Anniston came to me and said, we have to have an intention, group in our community. And so we hosted for almost 3 years. Every single Thursday, we would do these intentions where people would be able to call in. They would give us an intention. So somebody was sick and they wanted healing. Somebody wanted to sell a house and they couldn't sell their house, whatever the situation was. And we would go into a meditation, hold the vision of them achieving their end result. And then, a week or two later, we would get to hear back from them and they would have these miraculous stories of things that they had done. And all of this was done in the pursuit of teaching people and bringing awareness to people that we are not the physical self and that we can control the environment around us. So I highly recommend both of her books. Again, Power of Eight, phenomenal book, but I would start off first with the Intention Experiment.
Yeah, the Intention Experiment is great for anyone who needs more science. That's what I would say. It's literally page after page of scientific experiment done proving that we are really powerful beings and that our thoughts and our emotions, when directed, especially with intention, can change matter. And if you are someone who is like, well, I don't know, I'm still on the fence about all of this stuff, or if you know someone who is, this is such a great book to really lay the foundation of belief. And then, as Rudi said, The Power of Eight was a natural progression. She actually wrote it because at her workshops, she decided, okay, I wonder what would happen if I got groups together to hold intentions for people and how that would impact the recipient. But what was really interesting as she started doing this and she started seeing the recipients being impacted like in unbelievable ways when you have multiple people holding the same intention at the same time, the most surprising thing that came out of that was what happened to those that were actually holding the intention. And that by holding a positive intention for somebody else to heal or to expand or to get more abundance, that there's like a boomerang effect, and that it's also equally as powerful for those that are holding and sending the intention, which is why, again, Rudi and I wanted to start that intention group, which was such a blessing and so powerful and supported so many individuals, including ourselves, over several years. So definitely check out those two books. All right, this is my turn again. Okay, so the next book that I want to recommend is called Radical Forgiveness by Colin Tipping. And this book came to me at a really pivotal time in my life when I was going through a time of needing to forgive and to heal and to release. And it's interesting, the word forgiveness, I feel like, has a lot of different associations, right? We have the association that maybe you were taught through a form of religion of this is, forgiveness is something that you should do. And then you have the forgiveness of something, someone needs to forgive you or you need to forgive them. And what's interesting about this book is it completely shifted my perspective on forgiveness altogether. And what it did was it gave me a process. It gave me a system that I could follow when I was coming up against, negative emotion as related to a past event that had happened to me or things that were happening in my present, that I could then sit down and follow a list of questions that would guide me to essentially see the perfection in what was happening, to see that what was happening outside of me is just mirroring back to me something within me that needs to be addressed, or a past experience that had yet to be resolved in my life. And when I say this has completely changed the way I perceive my world and I act in my world and I show up and how I feel, it has absolutely done that. And this, again, it's just another great example of the power of a book to transform the quality of your life forever. And so I highly recommend this book to anyone who feels like they're carrying baggage from their past, who's having a really hard time letting go, is blaming, making excuses, complaining. A lot of that's that behavior of feeling like you're a victim in life. This book will change things for you. I can guarantee it. If you read it and you go all in, highly recommend.
I just recommended the book to a client this morning, and I've recommended this book probably about 20 or 30 times since Anniston first came home with the book. And my last recommendation was to somebody who had gone through a really difficult divorce, and the divorce has been many years, but they have not been able to move on. They've moved on from that relationship, but they haven't moved on necessarily into a new relationship or opened themselves up to the possibility of more. And there's something that holds us back when we've experienced a high level of trauma or a tremendous amount of pain through a relationship, and we're scared to open ourselves up, but we haven't necessarily forgiven, or we're mad, or we're angry, or if we still think about the person or the moment or the scene and we bring up immediate emotion, then we're still being anchored into that past. And so we're reliving that experience over and over. And if we move into another relationship, we're going to recreate a very similar scene or situation. Even though the person's name would change and the environment would change, we would still end up with a very similar result, because we're still vibrating and thinking and feeling and emotionally and chemically producing the same that we experienced back then, because we're anchored into the past. Whereas this book gives you the ability to be able to release that anchor. We don't have to go back and fix it. We don't have to go back and tell them what to do and how we think or feel about them now. All we have to do is let go. And this teaches you a step-by-step process of how to let go. I laugh because Anniston reads a lot of books. And when she recommends a book over and over and over and over and over again, I know that it's had profound impact on her. And there isn't a day that goes by that she doesn't say to me, "Oh, you should do, one of those release exercises." And then I'll come into my office in the morning and there'll be a stack of like 5 of them printed, just left there blank, ready for me to complete, because she knows the power in doing the exercise. And so if I'm frustrated with a family member, or if I'm frustrated with a friend or a client or something's happened, she's like, "Well, you should do one of those exercises." And that's like her go-to that I hear constantly every single day. But I will say that when you do the exercise, you feel the release. There's a separation between how you felt and who you get to be next. And that's why I'm a huge advocate of this work. So, highly recommend the book. My last book recommendation today is Buddha and the Badass. This is a book by Vishen Lakhiani. He is the founder and creator, co-founder of Mind Valley. If you don't know Mind Valley, highly recommend them. We have no affiliation, but we have been students of their work for so many years. It's an online platform where some of the best speakers, coaches, authors in the world are able to put content down that's very carefully selected. And this content is always groundbreaking. And, I don't think have found a course on there that we don't like, or that we haven't been interested in or wanted to finish and complete. So the book, Buddha and the Badass, is such a great book because, again, for me, I'm a spiritual seeker. And this is another story of Vishen's life where he shares a little bit of who he is, what his life was like, ultimately where he got to. But it's a book that's peppered with a tremendous amount of evidence, and it's evidence in the work that we are grounded in. I go into companies all day, every day, and I'm teaching organizations that we have a higher purpose, that we have passion, that, when we tap into our passion and purpose, we can produce tremendous more results. And when you support people to be seen and valued and heard and appreciated, then, productivity and revenue goes up. But he is able to, through his stories with evidence and scientific data, give you the evidence that these principles work in business. And if you are somebody who is a manager of people, or you are a leader of an organization, I highly recommend you read this book, because it's going to change how you show up for your people. When you change how you show up for your people, you're going to change how you show up for yourself. It is a profound book that I think every single person that is responsible for anybody else, whether you have kids, you should read it. Relationship, you should read it. Or whether you manage people or run a company, highly recommend the book, Buddha and the Badass, Vishen Lakhiani.
Yeah, it was a really great demo. Like for us, it just further validated all the work that Rudi brings into businesses, that I bring into the business that I'm working in. And it just further validates that at the end of the day, we're all human beings, whether we're at home or whether we're at work. and that it's really, really important that you offer opportunities for growth at work, for personal growth at work, for opportunities for people to heal at work. Why not? I mean, we spend more time there than we do at home. So, um, loved the book. Vishen has written several other books as well, but this is one that really stood out to us. So my final book is called Spiritual Growth: Being Your Higher Self by Sanaya Roman. Now, Sanaya Roman is not one that I imagine many people or many authors, many readers have heard of. And we discovered Sanaya Roman by chance as we were growing spiritually and really seeking to better understand our own intuition, our own ability to receive inspiration, receive information. We wanted to find a process. We wanted a book to tell us how do we develop this ability and this superpower, if you will, this sixth sense that we all have. And so we found one of her other books called Opening to Channel. And that book was exactly what we'd been looking for. The way that she writes, it's very channeled information in terms of its inspired information. But I will tell you, there's not a book that we haven't seen that or read that hasn't resonated profoundly with us. I think when you're reading something that feels like truth to you. You feel it almost like in every cell of your body. And I would say with every single one of Sanaya Roman's books, we feel this way. And the book Spiritual Growth in particular, what I loved about it is it's almost like a really great entry point or like sampler platter, if you will, for all these different concepts, these really complex spiritual topics or ideas or philosophies that are presented in such an easy to consume and digest and apply way. And I have read Spiritual Growth, this book, I literally have probably read 6 or 7 times. And to what Rudi was speaking to earlier and how, I wasn't this every time I read it, I'm reading it as a different person than the person who read it before. And so what I get out of it is so different. And so what I love about this book is that it really opens your mind and opens your eyes to all that's out there and a lot of things that maybe we can't see, and that we don't perceive every single day. And it does it in such an easy and loving way. And so if you are someone you feel like you're starting down a spiritual path, you don't really know where to start, but you're eager to learn and you're open, highly, highly recommend Sanaya Roman. She's also written, we actually grabbed some of her other books off of our shelf, several books, like I mentioned, Opening to Channel, Creating Money, Self-Love, so many other ones that are, Joy of Living. It's just a wealth of information. I cannot recommend it enough.
So Anniston said something that I want to further clarify for anyone that's listening, but you don't necessarily know what it means. Now, most of our listeners, I would imagine you're already on your spiritual journey. But if you don't know what that means, spiritual journey, in my experience, when someone is entering into their spiritual journey, it's when they've done a lot of things that they think are going to make them happy. They're going to fulfill them. They've got the job, the husband or wife, house, the picket fence, but something's missing. They enjoy their job, but something's missing about what they do every day. They want to find further meaning and value in why we're here. It kind of reminds me of when I was 15 years old, lying on the beach at midnight with a friend, and we're staring at the stars and we're asking, like, why are we here? Like, are we the only people? Like, it's those deeper questions of, what is the meaning of this relationship? What is the meaning of this job? Why do I work with these people? And what am I meant to do? And where am I meant to go? And when we start to ask these questions, we're ready for additional information. Anniston said that picking up any of Sanaya's books is like reading the truth. And to me, these books carry a weight. They have an energy around them that it's, when you pick it up, it's otherworldly. This information is so crystal clear and brings clarity. Few things in life, I find, especially in today's day and age, bring clarity. This brings clarity, and it gives purpose, meaning, and value. Any one of her books in why are we here? How can you progress? But more than anything, how can you live the most joyful and abundant life? Because we're all supposed to be living our highest and our greatest potential. So we've given a bunch of recommendations, and I hope that at least one of, if not all of the 6, adding the 7th book that I added, recommendations piques your interest. But my hope or challenge for you is that you grab at least one, download it this weekend, and hopefully it sets you off on a path of self-discovery.
I would love to say one thing just to close out, because I know that there are probably many of you listening that maybe you're not readers. Maybe you don't make time to read every day. That's not a part of your daily habit. Maybe it's not a passion for you. But here's what I want you to think about. As it relates to change, and when you start thinking about your life and you start thinking about, I really want to change, I want to improve this aspect of my life, or I really want to be healthier, have better relationships, I want to have more money, that all change starts with a change of perception. And that why I love to read every single day is because every single day I have an opportunity to shift my perception on something. Knowing that when I make even the smallest shift of a new idea that I've never thought of before, or a new way of looking at things, that, as we like to say, and Dr. Wayne Dyer loves to say, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And that sometimes it's the smallest little habit that you add into your life that will, I promise you, create the greatest change that you seek. Reading is an incredible tool to do that. And there are so many books at your disposal, so many free books at your disposal. All you have to do is be a willing student and be willing to open yourself up to new ideas, and your entire world will shift.
Thank you so much for joining us for the InPowered Life podcast. We freaking love you guys so much. We hope you have an amazing rest of your week. And if you have read any of these books and have takeaways, share them with us. If there are books that we haven't mentioned and you think that we should read, then please send us a message as well, as we would love to be able to learn and grow with you as our audience. Have an amazing rest of your week. We love you guys. We'll catch you in the next episode. Bye.
If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe so you don't miss out on future content. And we would love your support in leaving us a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Make sure to check the show notes for more information on how you can find us online and on Instagram. Now go create an amazing day for yourself, and we'll see you again soon.